Hey everybody, Mary Fran Bontempo here. And before we get started with this week's episode, did you know that Brilliantly Resilient can come directly to you? That's right, we have keynotes, programs, presentations, workshops, all available to companies, associations, conferences, and organizations, either virtually or live in person. So head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net at the speaking tab to find out more. And while you're there, you can also sign up for our weekly Brilliance Bit, which comes to you once a week directly to your inbox and has a bit of brilliance from this week's show and will keep you living in a brilliantly resilient mindset. Okay, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you going to live there or are you just visiting? Let's check in with Mary Fran and Kristen to learn how to come through not broken, but brilliant.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. I have a wonderful guest with me today by the name of Sarah Gormley. Sarah, thanks for joining me. And I'm going to jump into my notes here to tell you a little bit about Sarah because her background is interesting, but her background's not exactly the reason why she's here today. So Sarah is a writer, art gallery owner living in Columbus, Ohio. Sarah's previous life was spent in corporate America, where she directed marketing efforts for global brands, including IMAX, Martha Stewart, Girl Scouts of the USA, and Adobe. But here is why Sarah is really here. What happens when a marketing executive leaves San Francisco to care for her dying mother on their family farm in Ohio? A Hallmark heroine would fall in love with her high school sweetheart during a snowstorm, but this is no Hallmark movie. Sarah spent much of her life trying to outrun the persistent self-loathing that plagued her from childhood, convinced that self-worth was something she had to earn by doing rather than by being. When she returned to Salt Creek Farm at age 45, she had no idea that detaching from the success she believed defined her, untangling the complicated relationship with her mother, and continuing the hard work of therapy would lead to a wildly transformed life. Sarah, thank you for joining us. There is so much there that I want to get.
A lot. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. This is the first podcast I'm doing and sort of promoting the book. So
I am honored. So let's get to the title of the book, which is also something that I want to dive into. The title of the book is The Order of Things, which When I first saw the title, I was like, okay, And as I got into the book, I was like, this is profound. It is The Order of Things, 4 words that it's such a profound title because we have an order in our minds of the way things are supposed to go. And let me just ask you, how often has that happened in your life?
Oh, well, that's the way I approached my life from age 5 until 45. I thought I'm a gold star chaser. And so,
oh gosh,
right? Aren't we all?
Oh my gosh, give me the star. Just put it on the paper, sister.
And so I learned how to get the gold stars. And frankly, I got pretty good at it. And so that's what I thought the order was. Go do these things and life will be fulfilling, right? I thought there was an equation. And guess what? There's no equation.
There is no equation, but don't we all grow up thinking that? And I think it starts, very innocently from our parents in ways of trying to keep us safe. Don't do this, do that.
Yes.
But it morphs into something beyond that. And you talk about the approval, the approvals at the base of all this, the gold star thing.
Yes. And there's a sort of I think a poignant scene in the book where my father is helping my sister do multiplication tables. And I was observing and I knew it hit me. If you just give the right answer, everybody's happy. So I started this pattern of doing what I thought my parents and the world wanted, which isn't uncommon. I can name 28 friends out of 30 who have the same ideas. So it took me a long time to figure out that there's another way, or I wanted there to be another way, because for me, chasing the gold stars and becoming what I thought the world wanted wasn't very fulfilling.
So that brings me to I have so many questions.
Okay, well, you asked.
I have so many questions. But that brings me to another point here, and that's this, you talk about this self-loathing. Now, I can say personally, I don't know if I've ever experienced it to that degree, but I have certainly, even to the present day, experienced that disappointment in self. So if you're doing everything you think you're supposed to be doing, if you're achieving all of the goals, where does that come from?
Well, what I thought would happen, what I thought the order would be, was like, I knew I didn't feel good about myself. Self-loathing, there are different names for it. It wasn't depression. I realized that, it's not anxiety. It was this constant sort of a soundtrack that I wasn't pretty enough or smart enough or skinny enough, all the things. And so I thought, well, okay, I feel this way, but if I go do the things, right? If I'm thin and the world keeps telling me I'm successful and smart, I'll catch up, right? I'll start to feel better because I'm doing all the things. And as you might imagine, by the time I was 29, 32, 35, 40, I was like, what's happening? Like, this isn't good. I'm not getting what I think I'm supposed to be getting. And I really can't live this way for 40 more years. And that was the turning point.
So
that makes sense.
But yes, according to what I've been reading, it was the turning point, but it was the total turning point then was what happened with your mom. So
yes.
You're living this, at least outwardly successful life. I think at the time you were working for Adobe.
Yes.
You weren't happy. You were thinking about leaving. And then you find out that your mom has this cancer diagnosis. So yeah. I'm going to get a little existential here and go, is now that you're away from that moment, is this the universe sort of telling you something? And I keep saying I'm not a woo-woo person, but the older I get, the more I believe that the universe sends us messages if we would just pay attention.
Oh, and I had dinner with one of my artists who's in town for an opening. Last night we had dinner and I said, I'm just not very woo-woo. And she said, oh, I think you are. So, no. Is it coincidence of the timing? Absolutely not. In a very woo-woo philosophical way. Whew, this is make me emotional. I mean, it's not a coincidence that my life changed and I became a different version of myself fully after my parents died, both of them. I mean, that's, I don't know. I hope that one thing didn't have to happen to permit the other to happen, or I don't think it was a catalyst. It was just the timing, but it's pretty profound, I would say.
And I think that whether we like it or not in this, and most of the times it's or not, in this human existence that we're in, it's often those, we call them, at this Brilliantly Resilient, we call them sucker punches and train wrecks.
Yes.
It's often the sucker punches and train wrecks that take you off of this course that you thought you were supposed to be on.
Yes.
And they completely pivot you in a direction that you probably told yourself a million times you didn't want to go in.
Right. And that you're 100% correct. The mom's diagnosis, her cancer came back. That was a whammy. In my head and my heart, I knew I should not have taken the job with Adobe. I didn't know what else to do. I just kept working and getting these big jobs. And there's a moment in time where mom and I both know it's bad. Like, it's bad. likely terminal. We weren't wanting to say that. I'm like, what? I am coming home, period. Which then quickly became, I'm coming home and I'm going to spend a year readjusting, no matter what happens with her.
Right.
I need to spend a year sort of taking a breath, reevaluating, and continuing the work of therapy and figuring out what's next and how I try to make my life look and feel a little bit different. But it was that was a catalyst, that moment.
It's almost as though the universe knocks you off the track that you're on. Hey, dummy, you're not supposed to be here.
Hey, you're not getting it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're a little slow on the uptake. So we're going to make this happen a little bit faster for you.
But what you said is you have to respond.
I think those signs, and the signs are here, and I'm pointing to the pit of my stomach for people who aren't watching this. The signs are here. I say this all the time. Never ignore your gut. It's telling you the truth. But because the truth that we feel is so often at odds with what the world is telling us we're supposed to feel.
The gold stars make it really easy to ignore your gut.
Oh my gosh, don't they ever?
Because I'm like, well, yeah, this is just insecurity. Maybe I just have a little bit of imposter syndrome. No, my gut was saying, you need some radical change.
And I'm going to make sure you get it. The universe said, we're going to push you there. So, okay. So you leave Adobe.
Yes.
Let me just say this, not only do you leave your big corporate job, but you leave the big city to go back to a farm. I mean, you say this is like a Hallmark movie. I mean, it kind of is. The setup is, at least, without obviously the tragic part of it. But talk about radical change. But I will go back to this, and this was one of my favorite parts, and you'll learn why. You talk about your relationship with your mom, which you say you had to kind of untangle. But early on, you talked about getting off the school bus, running home to see your mom because you had a little bit of time before your older siblings came home to snuggle with your mom. And here it comes, folks, to watch Another World on TV, which I watched with my mom all the time. And you mentioned these characters, and I'm like, is she going to talk about Rachel? Another World is a soap opera for anybody who doesn't know.
And my mom would retell that because I was super concerned. I wanted to see my mom before my brother and sister came home, but I needed to know if Mac and Rachel were going to get a divorce. And she said, she was like, later she would tell friends, I mean, I had a moment where I thought maybe that's not great that my 5-year-old is worried about the soap opera character.
We used to sit at the dinner table. A quick aside here, we used to sit at the dinner table and talk about this, my sister and I, with my mom. And I can remember my father at one point getting this horrified look on his face because he thought we were talking about
real people.
Soap opera, Dad, soap opera. But anyway, to jump back into our conversation, you left the big city, went back to the farm. I want to ask, obviously there was fraught with the worry for your mom, but you talk about this moment when you got right at the drive up to the bottom of the hill with it. Tell me what you felt.
I knew something very important was happening. And, I say in the book, the farm also raised me. It's this beautiful rolling hills, woods, and caves. And I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have as a little girl. I mean, I love it.
Right. I mean, who does when they're kids?
But so to come home and it's a physical attachment to the land, and it kind of embraced me. And I knew what was waiting for me at the top of the driveway. I had learned the day before from my sister. I'd been in New York on a work trip. I'd learned the day before that mom had these tumors up and down her spine. And so you come up to the top of the driveway. If I turned right, there are the barns, and I knew my brother would be over there. And if I turned left to go directly to the house, I knew mom was waiting. And so I stopped the car for a second and thought, okay, this is a big deal, and just get ready. And
Here we go.
yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So did you rather quickly, I would think, I would think, let me put it this way. I would think the fact that maybe you experienced that sort of embrace was a little bit of a hug for you to deal with the rest of what was coming. And these are the places with our families where it gets real. Here we go, with whatever's going on, it gets real. But the fact that you felt that implies that warmth, that way that you grew up, that's the foundation that we all need to find. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And not lost on me or probably my friends and family. I wanted to get away from the farm as soon as I could. I mean, I was headed to New York via Chicago, but I went to graduate school in Chicago, but I was headed to New York City even as a little girl because I thought, well, I'm not a farm girl, and now I think, what a blessing. Like, who gets to grow up in a place that is so breathtaking and free? Little no locks on the doors. No, we didn't lock the cars at night. I mean, just freedom. So it shaped me more. The physical landscape and the nature and the surroundings of the farm shaped me more than I knew and appreciated. And obviously the people, but there's a lot of detail in the book about the place.
So let's transcend this a little bit, your experience. How do we frame that for an audience that's maybe looking for that? Do we go back to our childhoods and go, okay, what was good? I mean, and a lot of people didn't have good, but to your point about not appreciating it at the time, maybe that's what we need to do. We need to go back and see that and see like the humanity that was there, because I know your relationship with your mom was a little bit complicated
Yes.
at times, but we're human.
Yes, and I think I've had a couple of conversations where I talk about the book, that it's not a self-help book.
Right.
It's a self-hope book.
Self-hope book.
Because I'm not a therapist. I'm not a life coach. It's a highly personal story about my experience. So, what worked for me, and when I say worked, what helped me recalibrate were a lot of things, but part of it was understanding my childhood differently. And nobody really loves hearing about therapy. I could talk about therapy forever, but one of the best gifts to me from therapy is if you understand things differently, a lot of anger and pain evaporates.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't have to blame my parents for anything. And I never did, honestly, because I was so busy blaming myself. But I think that there are opportunities to revisit elements and parts of your life and people in your life and think, well, what was really going on there? If you really take a different look at it, it gives you some relief. At least it did for me.
You know what? That is so perfectly said. I think we spend so much time running away from the things that were hard and were painful. My dad was a big guy, and I lost him way too soon.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a big guy, and he was a scary guy, and he yelled a lot, and of course I was afraid of him.
Mm-hmm.
But as an adult looking back, I know where that came from. I know that it was not what he wanted to be. He was raised like that. He was raised very strictly, and it pains me that I lost him, because I could see him softening as he got a little bit older. And you're so right about revisiting those places and those times that might have been painful and trying to look at them through a different lens, it really releases things. So, to that end, is this a book about releasing things?
Well, it's a book about a lot of things. Life is about a lot of things, and it's not an equation, right? There's no simple formula. There were several factors that led to this radically different life that I've created. And what I was trying to do through the writing process was understand what happened, right? I was trying to understand what happened because it felt so profound that I actually don't even know if this is in the book anymore. But I mean, I was at a gas station on like a Thursday afternoon and just crying. And it was because I was filled with so much joy. And I was like, this feels so crazy and strange and uncomfortable, but my God, how did I get here? Right. And so, I was trying to piece the things together and be honest about it. And so it's not a Hallmark movie. It's pretty messy and there's a lot of complication, but what life isn't.
That to me is it's so huge for us to just accept that. This is a mess. It's a kind of a cluster. It's kind of a cluster F most of the time. It really is.
100% is.
So, when you can accept that and you just go, I'm going to do this with whatever good I have in me, and I'm going to stop thinking about what I should be doing. This is one of the things that I talk about with Brilliantly Resilient. When you let go of the way you think things should be, you make room for what they could be.
And I still, listen, I'm still hard on myself, but I have tools now to say, hey, shut up, negative voice, right? And the shoulds. And just, it's this kind of, it's not just permission. It's like you have an opportunity to approach life differently. Take it, right? Go. Yeah. And it still surprises me. It surprises me that I own an art gallery and that I'm madly in love with a wonderful man. And I never could have fathomed that these things were possible. And this is the life that I'm so relieved and happy and thrilled that I've created. But whatever it is for somebody else, my hope is there might be these little kernels that give readers a little bit of hope that they can adjust some things in their own lives. It's been a fascinating experience, and I don't know what life looks like 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but I know that I'm not going to spend it with this negative voice in my head telling me I suck.
Well, and that you're not measuring up to some version of yourself that you don't really want to be in the first place.
Exactly. It's like I did that for 30 years. And guess what? It wasn't very much fun. It certainly didn't include much joy. And I was exhausted.
Yeah.
But you said something a few minutes ago about making room.
The could be, should be thing.
You get rid of that. You have room
for the could be's.
And the other thing that I have created room for, I am filled to the brim with gratitude.
Yes.
And I did not know. Oprah used to talk about a gratitude journal. This is when I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not kidding you. I had things on my list like cigarettes, Budweiser. Those were on my gratitude list. I don't think I really knew what gratitude was. I was like, well, I like those things. Pizza was on my gratitude, in my gratitude journal. So, and now, because I have freed up space in my mind and in my heart and my body, I have room for all this gratitude about the beautiful things in life. It doesn't mean that life isn't complicated and messy and really hard sometimes. But the gratitude makes all of that a lot easier to navigate.
So here's another question for you. And I go through this all the time. What you don't know about me is my son struggled
I
with
knew. Yes, I
oh,
did. I
okay.
did my homework
You
for
got
him.
that bit, okay? The
Yeah.
alcohol, the heroin addiction, the substance abuse, all of that stuff. And I say to people all the time, you know what? The sucker punch is going to suck. It really, it's just, there's no, I hate it when people go, oh, it's such a blessing. No, it wasn't. No, it was not. It's not a blessing.
And you don't have to call it a blessing.
Right.
It
But it
sucks. It's
can
awful.
lead, it can lead to that transformation because what I've found, and it sounds like what you found, is when you get to that place where everything else disappears and that thing happens. And for you, it was your mom. And for me, it was my son. When you get to that place where the most important thing in your life is right in front of you, everything else just goes away. And you get this opportunity to be your most genuine self. And if you're smart, you will rebuild from that place.
Yes. And why is it so terrifying to be our most genuine selves? Like, I was nervous. My friends are the best. I'm like, what am I? Who am I if I don't have this big job? And they're like, hey, Gorms, you know what? Your big job was our least favorite part about you because I was about it. And I was like, oh, I'm like, they like me for me. I'm like, they're like, we don't care. We don't care that you work for Martha Stewart and IMAX and Adobe at all. Like nobody cares. But you get attached to it, right? You get attached to the things that you think make you who you are. And once they're stripped away, like you just said, you're left with this person. You're like, hey, she's all right. She's
Yes.
cool.
Yes, yes, it's exactly that. And you said, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I wrote this down, something about, oh, here it is. The people who knew me best actually adored me. That was a line from your book. I mean, and we spend so much time thinking we're not measuring up when not only do we measure up, we are more than enough for those people who really know who we are, even when we don't know ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. And your self-worth is just in you. And I spent all this time thinking I had to earn it, right? I had
That's
to do
classic right there.
right. I had to do certain things to earn respect and frankly probably to earn love. I thought I was like scrambling all the time, feeling like if I just did enough and earned enough and checked all the boxes, I was like, somebody will love me. And lo and behold, like all the cheesy music videos, you have to love yourself. Justin Bieber.
Music.
There you go. Right? I don't know. It's crazy.
It really is, but there's so much about you. Again, we're making jokes here about it being a Hallmark movie, but at its core, it's a Hallmark movie with life's crap thrown into it, and like big crap, not oh, my little store gift shop is going under until the guy comes in and say, not that kind of crap, like the real crap. But when you accept what's in front of you and you just deal with that, to go back to your point about just being, is that where you find yourself? Is that where you found yourself?
Yes, with the caveat that there were 10 years of therapy in there. Well, 5, I started at 40. So, the mom's cancer and mom's death were these, catalyzing moments. But unlike the Hallmark movie, there were 5 full years of hard work. And so, I say therapy is not like hiking the Appalachian Trail. It's not like you get these success points. You don't know how it's affecting your worldview and how it's affecting your view of yourself. And so that work made what happened when I came home to the farm possible. And I think that's it isn't this sort of like instantaneous lightning struck and I had all the answers.
Yeah.
It was like No, it's some time and investing in figuring the things out that you need to figure out.
And I am a huge advocate of therapy, having undergone many years of therapy myself. A couple of the things that you talk about here is the change is uncomfortable and it's difficult. There's a part of you that you need to have faith in yourself. I always say to people, look, you're not an idiot. Like you've gotten this far, you're not an idiot. Just trust yourself a little bit. And therapy allows us to be, in fact, encourages us to be introspective in the right ways, not introspective in the wrong ways. I didn't get the job, I didn't get the promotion, what do I have to do about that? But it's introspection in the right ways.
Yes. Why am I reacting this way to this event or what somebody said? What's going on in me? And I still have to do it. I just talked to my therapist yesterday. Let's go slowly. I'm like, God damn it. Let's go. Right.
Can't we just get to the end?
But yeah, and so the reason I included the therapy scenes, so there's real dialogue with my therapist, is I much less so, but I still think there's a little bit of a stigma or hesitation for people. And I wanted to show some people like this is what happens. It's not like, we have conversations. Sometimes there's a little nugget that you carry through. Most times we have to repeat the same topics or the same questions. And eventually it starts sinking in. And when you have this negative thought about yourself or angry outburst toward a partner, you learn, wait a minute, what's going on in me? That's not about him at all.
Yeah.
I'm having a moment of raging insecurity. Back it up. And the other thing I learned, one of my favorite scenes is when I learned that sometimes I just need to shut up. I don't have to tell my boyfriend everything I'm thinking all of the time. It's okay. Just let him speak and listen. So anyway,
I always say if I could do anything in my life, it would be to have spoken less and listened more.
Well, I don't know.
For me, again, this is an individual thing. And I think, we almost have to give ourselves permission to feel what we feel because we're so busy trying to talk ourselves out of it because it's not what's supposed to be.
Right. Or talk ourselves into the thing that we think we should be.
Right.
And it's exhausting.
It is. And at the end of the day, it doesn't get you where you want to be anyway.
No, never.
No.
And then you're pissed at yourself that you spent all the time and energy doing the thing that wasn't getting you what you wanted. And it just feeds itself in this cycle.
I think a lot of this is about releasing ourselves.
Yes.
I think a lot of this is about releasing ourselves, not only from doing things that we didn't do, but accepting that we did them, releasing ourselves from the guilt of that, because there is guilt. When you finally get to that, why did I do this all that time? You feel guilt. Why did I waste my time? You feel guilt. You have to release yourself from that too. And you go, okay, you know what? What did I learn from those experiences? And what can I bring with me to this new person that I am?
Right. What can I take from that experience?
Right.
And learn so the next one is a little bit different. Or, I love this word recalibration because it's little adjustments, right?
Yes.
Little adjustments along the way. And you're like, oh, look at that. This feels better. It feels better to think about something in this way. So yeah, I thank you. Thank you for your questions. It's a little overwhelming this is my first book. So to have it out there, I knew I was writing a book and wanted to publish a book. So I knew it would be out there, but now that it is, it
looks like a baby. Because it comes from your heart. It comes from your soul. If you're writing about your experiences, it comes from your soul. That's not an easy thing to put out to the world because it's, you may have become a little bit more enlightened, but maybe not everybody else is. So there is an element of judgment that you're going to experience. But again, this is all part of being okay with where you're at. And I think at the end of the day, that's where you want to get in the order of things.
Yes. Well said.
Sarah, I cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed this conversation. It has been wonderful. Tell us all when we are talking right now in July. So tell us when the book is coming out, if we can, how we can get it and where we can find out more about you.
Okay. So the publication date is September 10th. But you can pre-order it now. And I have learned now that I'm in the publishing world that pre-orders are like the big driver of a book success. So you can order it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Bookshop, and you can also call your local bookstores. Wherever you like to buy books, you can find it.
Excellent. And a website.
Oh, sarahgormley.com. And follow me on Instagram because it's a memoir, I'll be sharing photos and videos of the farm and actual scenes from the book.
I'm so excited for people to be able to read this because it is a humor-filled story. I want everybody to understand that. It's sweet, it's funny, it's poignant, it's everything that a good book should be. So I'm so delighted that you came and you joined me today. Everybody, please go out and pre-order The Order of Things because it is a wonderful read. Sarah, I wish you every success. Thank you so much for being with me. If you all need a little bit more inspiration, you can head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net, sign up for our Brilliance Bits. Sarah will be part of that when we air this episode. And you can learn more about how to live a brilliantly resilient life. We will see you next time on Brilliantly Resilient Live.
Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.